When the mightiest empire in Arabia sent its most cunning diplomats armed with mountains of treasure to a foreign king's court, they expected to drag back a handful of starving refugees in chains. They never imagined that a single man's words would bring that king to tears and shatter their schemes entirely. In the year 615 CE, a small group of Muslims stood trial in the royal palace of Abyssinia, their lives hanging by a thread, as the Quraysh envoys whispered poison into the ears of generals they had already bought with bribes. The trap was elegant: force these believers to speak about Jesus before a devout Christian king, and watch them condemn themselves with their own theology. But among those refugees stood Jafar ibn Abi Talib, cousin of the Prophet, who carried no gold, no army, no political leverage, only the truth and a handful of verses that would echo through 14 centuries of history. What he said in that throne room didn't just save the first Muslim emigrants, it moved a king to defy his own priests, reject a fortune in gifts, and utter words so profound that when he died years later, a prophet who had never met him led prayers for his soul from a city 1,000 miles away. The sun of Mecca beat down on the scorched earth, but the heat of persecution was fiercer. The screams of slaves tortured on burning sands echoed through the valleys, a grim warning to anyone who dared whisper the name of the one God. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, looked upon his suffering companions with eyes full of sorrow. They were few, weak, and defenseless against the tyranny of the Quraysh, who had turned the sanctuary of the Kaaba into a house of fear. Disperse in the land, the Prophet commanded them softly, seeking a way to save their lives. There is a king in Abyssinia in whose realm no one is wronged. Go there until Allah opens a way for us. It was a desperate hope in a world of darkness. In the dead of night, they slipped away. Men, women, and children left their homes, their wealth, and their memories, trading the familiar cruelty of Mecca for the terrifying unknown of the Red Sea. Among them was Jafar, the cousin of the Prophet. The Quraysh were furious when they discovered the escape. Their pride was wounded, their captives had slipped the leash. They gathered a war council, not to send armies, but to send diplomats armed with silver and cunning. They chose two of their sharpest minds, Amr ibn Alaz and Abdullah ibn Abi Rabia. These men knew the courts of kings and the language of bribery. They loaded camels with precious leather, the most coveted gift in the lands of Africa. The ship carried the Muslims across the churning waves to the shores of Aksum. They stepped onto foreign soil, strangers in a strange land, breathing the air of safety for the first time in years. They prayed under the open sky, free. But the shadows of Mecca were long. Amr and Abdullah arrived in Abyssinia shortly after, their eyes set on the royal palace. They did not go to the king immediately, they went to his generals, the gatekeepers of power. To every general, they gave a gift of fine leather, whispering poison into their ears. Some foolish slaves from our people have fled to your king's country. They have forsaken our religion and not entered yours. Help us get them back. Greed paved the way. The generals, weighed down by bribes, agreed. When we speak to the king, they promised, we will advise him to surrender them to you without a hearing. Why should the king burden himself with rebels? The day of the audience arrived. The court of the Negus, Najashi, was grand, filled with the scent of incense and the weight of authority. The king sat upon his throne, a devout Christian known for his wisdom and justice. Amr ibn Alaz prostrated before the king, presenting the gifts. The Negus accepted them, pleased. Then Amr spoke, his voice smooth as silk. O king, a group of foolish youth from our people have hidden in your asylum. They have insulted our gods and criticized our forefathers, Amr continued, painting the refugees as anarchists. They have not embraced your Christianity, nor kept their own faith. We, their nobles, ask you to return them. The generals stepped forward, acting their part. The Meccans speak the truth, O king, they chimed in. Their own people know them best. It is wise to return them and avoid trouble. The trap was set, the jaws ready to snap. The Negus frowned. He was a man of justice, not convenience. No, he thundered, his voice echoing in the hall. By God, I will not hand them over until I hear their side. People who sought my protection shall not be betrayed. He ordered a messenger to summon the Muslims. In their humble dwellings, fear seized the refugees. What shall we say to the king? Some whispered, terrified of the executioner's sword. The Quraysh are powerful here. Jafar ibn Abi Talib stood tall, his face calm. We will say what our prophet has taught us, he declared. We will speak the truth, no matter the outcome. If truth saves us, it is Allah's will. If it kills us, we die as believers. They entered the royal court. The bishops sat in rows, wearing their mitres, open scriptures on their laps. The atmosphere was heavy with judgment. The Quraysh envoys smirked, confident of their victory. The king looked at the ragtag group. They did not prostrate. "Why do you not bow to the king?" a courtier hissed. Jafar stepped forward. "We bow only to Allah," he said respectfully, sending a shockwave through the room. The Negus looked intrigued rather than insulted. "What is this religion," he asked, "that separates you from your people and keeps you from mine?" The court fell silent. The fate of the migration hung on this moment. Jafar began to speak, his voice steady and resonant. "O king, we were a people of ignorance, Jahiliyyah. We worshipped idols, ate dead meat, and committed abominations. The strong devoured the weak, and we knew no law. We severed ties of kinship and treated our neighbors with cruelty," Jafar continued, painting a vivid picture of their dark past. "We lived in this darkness for centuries, blind to the light of truth and virtue. Then Allah sent a messenger from among us," Jafar said, his eyes shining. "We knew his lineage, his truthfulness, his trustworthiness, and his chastity long before he claimed prophecy. He was the best of us. He called us to the oneness of God," Jafar explained. "He commanded us to speak the truth, to honor our trusts, to be kind to our kin, and to protect the weak. He forbade us from bloodshed and false witness. He taught us to pray, to fast, and to give charity." Jafar listed the virtues of Islam, contrasting them with the barbarism the king knew of the pagan Arabs. The Negus listened, leaning forward, captivated. "Because we followed him," Jafar said, pointing to his companions, "our people turned against us. They tortured us to force us back to idol worship. When their oppression became unbearable, we sought your land, hoping for justice." The Negus looked at Amr, then back at Jafar. The contrast was stark, the sophisticated diplomat with his bribes, and the refugee with his sincerity. "Do you have with you anything that your prophet brought from God?" the king asked. "Yes," Jafar replied. The king commanded him to recite. Jafar chose Surah Maryam, a chapter named after the mother of Jesus. He began, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. The ancient Arabic words filled the hall with a divine rhythm. He recited the story of Zechariah praying for a son, and then the story of Mary withdrawing from her family. He spoke the verses describing the miraculous conception of Jesus, a narrative dear to the heart of the Christian king. She pointed to him, Jafar recited. They said, "How can we talk to one who is a child in the cradle?" He, Jesus, said, "I am the servant of Allah." The word struck the heart of the Negus like an arrow of light. Tears began to flow from the king's eyes, rolling down his cheeks until they soaked his beard. The bishops, moved by the familiar yet profound sanctity of the words, wept until their scriptures were wet with tears. "This," the Negus declared, pointing to the invisible source of the recitation, "and what Jesus brought, come from the same niche of light." He turned to the Quraysh envoys, his face hardening into stone. "Go," he roared at Amr and Abdullah. "By God, I will never surrender them to you. They are safe here." The envoys were dismissed, humiliated. The bribes had failed against the power of the Quran. But Amr was cunning. He was not ready to accept defeat. As they left the palace, he muttered to Abdullah, "By God, I will come back tomorrow with a trap that will uproot them from this land. I will expose their belief about Jesus." Abdullah warned him, "Do not do it. They are still our kinsmen, even if they oppose us." But Amr's heart was hardened by pride. "I will tell the king that they claim Jesus is merely a slave," he plotted. The next morning, Amr returned to the court. "O king," he said with feigned concern, "these people say a terrible thing about Jesus, the son of Mary. Send for them and ask them what they believe about him." The king summoned the Muslims again. This time, the fear was greater. They knew the question would be a trap. If they said Jesus was a servant, they risked offending the Christian king who believed in his divinity. "What shall we say?" the Muslims asked Jafar urgently. Jafar's resolve was iron. "We will say what our prophet taught us," he insisted. "We will not change one word of the truth, even if it costs us our lives." They entered the court. The atmosphere was tense. The Negus looked at them sternly. "What do you say about Jesus, the son of Mary?" he demanded. The bishops leaned in, ready to condemn the heretics. Jafar stepped forward. "We say about him what our prophet brought," he answered clearly. "He is the servant of Allah, his messenger, his spirit, and his word which he cast into Mary the Blessed Virgin." The court held its breath. This was a denial of divinity, a potential capital crime in a Christian state. The Negus bent down and picked up a small stick from the floor. He held it up for all to see. By God, the Negus declared, Jesus, son of Mary, does not exceed what you have said by the length of this stick. He affirmed the Islamic definition of Christ's nature. The bishops around him snorted in anger and disbelief. The Negus glared at his grumbling priests. Even if you snort, he silenced them. He turned to the Muslims, his face softening into a smile of genuine brotherhood. Go, for you are safe in my land. Whoever insults you will be fined, the king proclaimed. Whoever harms you will be punished. I would not give up this safety for a mountain of gold. He looked at the pile of leather gifts from the Quraysh. Give these back to them, the Negus ordered, pointing to the bribes. I have no need of them. God did not take a bribe from me when he restored my kingdom, so why should I take a bribe against him? Amr and Abdullah were cast out of the palace, broken and humiliated. They gathered their rejected gifts and returned to Mecca in disgrace. Their plot had only served to strengthen the bond between the king and the believers. The Muslims lived in Abyssinia in the best of homes with the best of neighbors. They practiced their faith openly, without fear. It was the first victory of Islam, won not by the sword, but by the truth and the Quran. Years later, when the Negus passed away, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was in Medina. He gathered his companions and said, "A righteous brother of yours has died in a distant land. Rise and pray for him." The Prophet led them in the funeral prayer, Salat al-Ghaib, for the king who had never seen him, yet believed in him. It was a unique honor, bestowed upon the man who recognized the light of prophethood through the words of Jafar. The legacy of that day remains, a testament that truth, when spoken with courage and wisdom, can penetrate the hearts of kings. Jafar's speech stands forever as a beacon of diplomatic eloquence and unshakable faith. Just as Allah turned the heart of the Negus through the light of the Quran, may He turn every hardship in your life into ease and victory. Type Amin to claim this dua for yourself and your family. Join thousands of others seeking light by following our page for your daily dose of spiritual strength. May Allah raise your rank among the truthful and gather us all with the Prophet in the highest gardens of paradise.